Welcome back to a special round 2 of the FCS Playoffs episode of Rhody Beat Report. I'm Justin Theriot, joined by Zach Petrick, Emily Lanzarone, and of course Alexa Baker. We have a special episode ahead for all of you. We're going to take a look at the Rams' 21-17 victory over Central Connecticut State. We'll give our game reaction and analysis. We'll give a breakdown of the Rams' next opponent, Mercer. We'll also update you guys on the FCS playoff bracket. And lastly, of course, how the team is changing the program's narrative due to this record-breaking season. Stay tuned as we have a great episode ahead on Rhody Beat Report.
If Thanksgiving weekend wasn't joyous enough, the Rhode Island Rams won their first playoff game in 39 years, securing the program's first ever 11-win season. So let's take a look at how it went down on Saturday. In the first quarter, the Blue Devils drove well into URI territory on their first offensive possession, but Rhody defensive back DJ Curitin hauled in the interception. On the following Rhody possession, it started with a 39-yard run from Malik Grant, who has been so good this season, has broken the program record for rushing yards in a season. That possession ended with a blocked field goal by CCSU. They blocked a 45-yard attempt. Then later in the quarter, the Rams would get on the board first with 2:31 remaining in the first quarter. Tommy Smith, touchdown Tommy, a 38-yard reception from quarterback Hunter Helms, who rolled out of the pocket, found him downfield. One of the biggest highlight throws of the year for a Rams quarterback, Helms to Smith to open the scoring. Then on the very next play from scrimmage, Emmanuel Gomes with the 42-yard pick six. That made it 14-0 going into the second quarter.
Was a great way to go into the second quarter for sure. With 7:25 left, wide receiver Isaac Boston had an 11-yard reception from quarterback Rhody Olson for a touchdown, making it 14-7 URI. And with the drive set up by Hunter Helms' interception, which was caught by CCSU's Malachi Wright. With 31 seconds remaining in the half, the Rams opted to go for it on a 4th and 7 at the CCSU 30-yard line, but were unable to keep the drive alive as a pass to wide receiver Marquise Buchanan fell incomplete.
Going into the third quarter, the Rams' first possession of the second half got underway with a third straight 40-plus yard run by running back Malik Grant. This time for 75 yards, the drive ended with an interception by CCSU's Christopher Jean. And with about 1:27 left in the third quarter, wide receiver Isaac Boston had a 6-yard reception from quarterback Rhody Olson for a touchdown, making it 14-14. Following that, the Blue Devils did gain possession to start their scoring drive with a 4th and 2 stop as the Rams were knocking on the door of the red zone.
Yeah, then we got into the fourth quarter where this game was truly decided. It was a 6-yard rushing touchdown for touchdown Tommy. Once again, this time another direct snap. We've seen that play run multiple times for the Rams this season, and it seems to always be a successful play call, especially down at the goal line. So the Rams began their drive at the CCSU 32-yard line thanks to a 23-yard, punt return by wide receiver Sean Harris Jr. And then with 4:47 left to go, kicker Jack Barham nailed a 32-yard field goal to make this a 21-17 ball game. The Blue Devils got the ball back with just 43 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. And then on the first snap to Rhody Olson, his pass was tipped at the line of scrimmage, and it was defensive captain Wesley Neal making a baseball-like play over-the-shoulder catch to secure the win for Rhode Island. And like we've talked about, that was the game-sealing play to get Rhode Island not only their first playoff victory in nearly 4 decades, but also the program's first ever 11-win season. It was just capped off. An emotional game was capped off with an emotional play that really just was kind of a microcosm of the whole season in one moment like that. So it was great to see for, not only the program as a whole, but for Wesley Neal Jr., a guy that has been here for quite some time now. He's been a captain. He's been a first-team All-CAA member. He's, a guy that has talked about how he wanted to play FBS football, but teams were concerned about, his size. And so it's nice to see a guy stick around with Rhode Island. And, he said that the program, gave him a chance, and he gave the program all he had. And it was nice to see him get a special moment like that.
Another special moment 2 weeks in a row, another game-sealing play. So that was awesome. Was it 2 weeks in a row?
I believe so, yeah. Wesley Neal has been just on a tear, and hasn't been the only time that he's made those sort of game-sealing plays. I mean, if you think back on this season, how many times did Rhode Island get that 4th and goal stop, that 4th and inches stop, and you got to thank the nose tackle for that. So Wesley Neal has just been an absolutely fantastic nose tackle for the University of Rhode Island for quite some time now, and I'm sure anybody that has been a fan of this program for however long it has been, as long as you've been a fan for the last 4 years, you will remember Wesley Neal as one of the biggest pieces of the Rams' success over the last 4 years or so. As we've had some time to decompress from the minute of mayhem, Zach, why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown of some of the stats from this past weekend's game?
Yeah, the Rams gained 19 first downs, 6 more than the Blue Devils, while gaining 434 yards of offense to CCSU's just 271. The Rams also hauled in a season-high 3 interceptions with 2 sacks as well. The Rams lost the penalty battle, but only had 3 on the day, so they lost it, but not too badly at all. The most important stat, the Rams 8 for 14 on 3rd down and held the Blue Devils to just 4 for 12. They were clinical on both offense and defense in the 3rd down situation. As the teams both win games in similar ways behind strong run games and fantastic defensive play, Rhody once again rushed for over 226 yards and held CCSU to just 123 rushing yards behind the great play of the offensive line.
Behind that offensive line, Malik Grant, again, 223 rushing yards, this time on 29 attempts. A true bell cow running back has Malik Grant become, averaging 7.7 yards per carry, which is rather remarkable. Anytime you average 15, 20 carries a game, it's impressive to hit 5 yards per carry, but to get 29 carries and average nearly 8 yards a carry, it's really incredible, what Malik Grant has done for this program. It was his 2nd straight 200-yard rushing game and 7th on the season, going over 100 yards in just 13 games. So what a season it has been for Malik Grant. And despite being banged up, the offensive line once again had a very dominant performance, really, like we talked about already, paving the way for Malik Grant. And we want to give a special shout out to guys like Jordan Cooper and Damon McMillan Jr., who once again came into the game and didn't miss a beat, setting that tone up front. And the tight ends, of course, also had a great day blocking, and so did the receivers as well.
Yeah, in recent years, the receiving corps for Rhode Island has had a ton of depth, but this past week they continued to shine when they called upon in key moments. Wide receiver Marquise Buchanan only had 5 catches for 24 receiving yards, but finished November with 36 receptions for 496 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver Greg Baines III shined with a strong 5 catches for 71 receiving yards, and gadget player touchdown Tommy Smith had 2 catches for 57 yards with a 38-yard receiving touchdown, while tacking on 2 carries for 9 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Running back Gabe Sloat shined in his receiving back role with 2 catches for 16 yards to go with 2 carries for 9 yards. Speedsters Sean Harris Jr. and Omari Walker each had 2 catches for 40 yards.
All right, now we're going to move to the other side, the defensive veterans of the day. It was the definition of a unit effort for this defense on Saturday as they contained the ground game and limited the damage the Blue Devils could cause in the passing game, highlighted by the performance of our seniors. Defensive back DJ Curatun, who has seen more reps as the season has gone on, coming back from an injury last season, had the first interception of the day, making it Rams' 3 total interceptions. Defensive back Emmanuel Gomes gave all the momentum in the world to the sideline with his pick 6 in the first quarter. Defensive back Frederick Malay added 4 tackles and 2 key pass breakups. And the Rams deployed a heavy rotation as usual at safety, led by Gomes, that also included Sean Falloy, Andre DePina-Gray, and Quentin Hunter-Colvin. Along the defensive front, Wesley Neal Jr. once again single-handedly sealed the deal with his interception capping off a 3-tackle day where CCSU could only ever double-team him to try and contain him. Arguably the conference's best outside linebacker duo, AJ Pena and Gabe Solomons, also had strong games. Pena with 5 total tackles, 2 for a loss, 1.5 sacks, and Solomons with 5 total tackles and 1 for a loss.
So, with the first round wrapped up for the FCS playoffs, let's take a look at how the bracket looks as of today. So, we'll look at the top 8 seeds, all who received a bye through the first round, and now they will get to host an on-campus second-round game, so really a big deal to be a top 8 seed. So, in order, these are those teams. We got Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, then South Dakota, UC Davis, Incarnate Word, Mercer, Rhode Island's opponent, and Idaho.
And then among the at-large bids to advance to the second round are, of course, the Rhode Island Rams, Villanova, Illinois State, Tarleton State, Montana, and Albion Christian. Although there were a few first-round upsets, CAA co-champion Richmond and fellow CAA competitor New Hampshire were the only at-large seeds to lose in the first weekend of the playoffs. Not a great showing from the conference.
And I think before we move on, I just want to note that it really does not look great for the CAA conference. We talked about it a lot on the show. We felt as though the CAA was disrespected in some of these coaches polls, these media polls, and then you get to the postseason and your one of your conference champions loses, and some of your more premier programs also, were the only teams you see that first round upset. So, if you've been on social media, if you've been on Twitter or X or whatever, you have seen the CAA hate throughout the season, and it's just a shame that this first round sort of backed up what a lot of people seem to think throughout the course of the season.
All right, with all that being said, Southeastern Missouri State, Drake, Tennessee State, Eastern Kentucky, Central Connecticut State, and Northern Arizona all saw their 2024 campaigns conclude with a loss on Saturday. And that is your FCS playoff picture update heading into round 2 on Saturday, December 7th. To watch your number 10 Rhode Island Rams face off against number 7 Mercer, tune in at 2 p.m. on ESPN+.
So now with 2024 sort of coming to an end soon. Obviously, Rhode Island's still playing right now, but we've talked a lot about it, right? We have really talked so much about that 1985 season and, what it means to this program to see this jump or rise that it's taken in the last couple of years. Let's kind of talk about how the program is changing the narrative around itself. I mean, if you're a Rhode Islander and you've been around this program like some of us have for a long time, I mean, I grew up in the state, and I remember, growing up at the end of every year checking how the team did, and you're looking at 0-11, 1-10 seasons, and I remember in 2017, 2016, there was rumors swirling that they were ready to shut this program down, but thankfully for some really, big donations that I think a lot of people are grateful now at this point, and the program and the school really believing in the product that Jim Fleming was producing. They stuck around. They got a new turf field. They no longer played on grass. They got the lights put up, something that it's hard to imagine a Division I program playing for so long without stadium lights. But all of that went up just about 8-7 years ago now. And since then, under Coach Jim Fleming, this program has really turned around. We saw multiple back-to-back, winning seasons, something this program hadn't had. And that was really where the line was drawn. People were celebrating 6 and 5 seasons and near playoff berths. And now we're at a point where you finally get your first 10-win season. And that turns... or first 10-win season in a long time, and then that turns into the first 11-win season. And now, of course, with stadium renovations on the way, we saw that $82 million grant come down a couple years ago with plans to really improve the conditions at Meade Stadium. It's a really big deal, and it's rather quickly changed the narrative around this program, especially with the way the CAA has shifted. I mean, myself have criticized the way that they have gone about replacing programs like Delaware and JMU, but with those programs leaving, it does open the door, and Richmond as well leaving, it opens the door for Rhode Island to kind of solidify themselves as, a powerhouse in that CAA conference. I mean, NIL is now a big deal, and the transfer portal as well, and Zach, I'll let you talk upon it, but first, I think this team has done a really good job in the transfer portal, and I think you can watch it on the field every weekend. All these guys that we acquired just this season have made a huge impact in their first years.
I think when you really look at it going forward, a season like this, standing at 11-2, you're still in the playoffs. The season's not over. It's far from over. As good as Mercer is, nobody's counting Rhode Island out. This should be, a really tough battle. But you look at Malik Grant, who coming out of Sacred Heart, I thought, wow, this guy's coming to Rhode Island. He stayed FCS. Yeah, I thought he could go to the next level. Maybe the best rushing season in program history.
Easily, I think it is the best.
It may be the best rushing season in program history. A guy like that, Greg Gaines, he comes from Iowa State. That's a big FBS program. I mean, they've turned out a lot of NFL talent. Alan Lazard, pretty tall, just to name 2 Jets, to be honest. But there's a lot of NFL talent. Brock Purdy, there's a lot of NFL talent coming out of that program. To get a guy like that into your program is such a huge help. Devin Farrell from Virginia Tech, steps into the starting role this year, wins the battle, in the offseason, steps into the starting role. Well, I didn't win the battle, but, saw both quarterbacks win the role during the season. That's a guy who went to another big program. That's a big program at Virginia Tech. Was great for you this year. Unfortunately, injured currently, but was so good. And now you've got, your future quarterback ready to go. Look into the past. Kasim Hill, Maryland, then Tennessee. He didn't play for Tennessee, but those are big programs, especially Tennessee nowadays. I mean, you're bringing in guys from big programs, and I think it looks so good for you, for guys who are looking, for a change of scenery. Whether it's a big FCS program like Richmond is, they're leaving for the Patriot League. Their roster might have some shakeups. See if you can bring some guys from that. What a great season they had. And then you look at Delaware, same thing. They're moving on. But also guys who didn't get playing time at big FBS programs. You look at teams like Iowa State, Virginia Tech, Virginia, who had a bad season. There's a lot of talent on those teams of those big FBS programs. This type of season with the money coming in, to rebuild those stands. That's a lot. It means a lot to this program, and it does so much to have a season like this in the recruiting purposes. And I'm really excited, once this season is all over and done with, to see what kind of talent they bring in to reload this roster looking forward, because of the fact that there's still so much talent, for the future.
And I think one thing that I personally have taken note of, and you too, Zach, because Zach and I have had the pleasure of doing plenty of football broadcasts in our past, and when you do that, you just dig through the whole roster, and you see how many guys are transfers. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and name names, but there were transfers that came from the Power 5 level that were non-impact guys, didn't even see the field at URI. Some people have had character issues in the past, and that's why they left their big schools in the first place. But when you look at the last 2 seasons, what Coach Jim Fleming and those who work in the recruiting office and those who just do the recruiting in general, they've done a really good job of identifying the guys that are going to make that impact. You spoke to it, right, Malik Grant. We were shocked to see him stay at the FCS level. So to get a guy like that to move from Sacred Heart to URI, keep him at this level, and let him ball out the way they did. And you spoke to it as well, right? You got Greg Gaines, but he's not the only Iowa State guy. You also have Deion Silas, who another Iowa State guy. Those are guys that a lot of guys do move down from the FBS level down to FCS, and they don't play. They don't make an impact. They get lost in that mix, and eventually their careers are over. But Rhode Island has identified the guys who want to play. They want to work hard. They want to play football, and they want to have a future in it. And because these guys are so hungry, so desperate to have something, they work really hard. And you've seen that with Greg Gaines. You've seen that with Deion. You've seen that now with Devin Farrell. This is a guy who, coming out of college, held offers to Duke, held offers to Wake Forest. This is a guy that, if he had chosen a different school, maybe things would have worked out for him initially coming out of high school, but he goes to Virginia Tech. He was unable to really get into the rotation there, and now he comes to URI, and he doesn't even start at first. He sits behind I'm blinking Kasim Hill. And Kasim Hill, let alone, that was really when we first saw it happening with Rhode Island. If you know anything about Kasim Hill, this is a guy who was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. And if you're really a college football junkie or a nerd like myself, you remember that was the 2017 Maryland class that was crazy hyped up. It had DJ Moore. It was a top 5 recruiting class in the nation for a school like Maryland. And Kasim Hill's career just was plagued with injuries at Maryland, and he goes to Tennessee, and COVID sort of ruins that, and so he ends up at URI.
SLA Bulls,
yeah, and so stuff like that, and you are able to identify those guys who are moving down, and then we talked about guys that are moving up. Even before the season, you saw guys like Jaden McKenzie moving up from smaller FCS programs to schools like Rhode Island. Rhode Island has the facilities to get it done. Not only are we seeing those big grants that are going to help what is the current conditions of Meade Stadium, but in an era of NIL, this is a state college. This is a big state school. This is a school that is, according to the Wall Street Journal, the #1 public school in the New England region. This is a school that is known for its basketball history. Lamar Odom, those NCAA tournament runs, the Elite 8, Sweet 16, the PC game. This school is known for a lot of things, and I think because they're known for those things, because the money is coming in, I think you've now, because of this 11-win season, because of the new format of the playoffs being on ESPN Plus and stuff like that, that national recognition can really pave the way for what could be a really strong football program going forward. And now, they have a really long way to get there before they become an established program. In reality, this really could be a flash in the pan, and we're living through it, and it's a great thing, but when you look at the money coming in, when you look at the renovations, when you look at the new era of recruiting that we live in, it really is there on the table for Coach Fleming and, the athletic director, at URI, Thorbion, a great person, a great individual that we've had the pleasure of working with. They want this. They really do want this for URI, and it seems like the resources are available. And so, 20 years down the line, God knows what college football will look like, but let's say the SEC and the Big Ten do move into their own league, and all of a sudden those other FBS schools are left with nothing. Rhode Island could be in a good position to maybe not move up, but be a part of a new league. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities with this program, and and what resources they have around them, and I'm personally really excited to see them take advantage of that and grow. We're going to discuss our favorite sports movies. Originally, we were going to do favorite football, movies, but I don't think there's really enough good options for us to not overlap or someone to just pick one that isn't really good. So I'll start, and my favorite sports movie, and really my favorite movie of all time, and I know it's really how do I say it? I know it's cliche, but Moneyball. Moneyball is my favorite movie ever. My freshman year at URI, I took a film class, and our final project was to write a 10-page paper about a movie. So I wrote 10 pages breaking down Brad Pitt and Moneyball, and it's just, I could recite that movie line for line.
I'm sorry to inform you, I have the same answer.
Really? Yeah. That's fine by me. I mean, how could you not? It really is.
It's a great movie.
It's a beautiful movie. It's a great book. It's one of the best sports films of all time.
I agree. You know my answer. My answer is Moneyball. I think that's, as somebody who's so into baseball, just the way that you look at the way that Brad Pitt plays Billy Beane is just, I mean, obviously, I think that movie is a little bit, like, the conceptions are a little different, because that team did have still, the pitching on that team was unreal.
They had a bunch of Cy Young candidates that weren't mentioned once.
Not once. Their pitching was unreal that season. But I think it's nice to see baseball and baseball analytics represented so well by Brad Pitt, and then Jonah Hill's in it too.
Yeah,
as the made up character who's like based off of 3 people or something.
I think it's one of Jonah Hill's best performances, and then, like you said, as like a baseball nerd, it's cool to see stats sort of displayed in that way. And obviously, it wasn't really the movie itself, because the movie I think didn't come out until 2011. But the original book really did change the way that real-life baseball general managers operate. Even today, teams like the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees that operate with these ridiculous $300 million, annual salaries, they still do employ a lot of these strategies. And so it's just cool to see a movie sort of display in what is a very watchable way.
I actually think the book and movie, I think the movie specifically kind of destroyed the way the A's did it, because it just kind of leaked.
Everybody does it.
Now that's how everybody does it. It was kind of the secret, and now it's no longer. But enough about Moneyball, because you and I could go on all day.
On forever. This whole episode could have been Moneyball, really. So, Alexa, what's your favorite sports movie ever?
I don't know if I would say ever, but a recent sports movie that I really, really like is The Iron Claw. Has anyone seen The Iron Claw?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
It was fantastic. I am a big movie theater person. I would rather watch a movie in the theaters than at my own house.
That's
I
a good
love
take.
movie theaters.
Yes, I agree with that take.
And I am at South County Cinema way too often.
I love that
if you ever
place.
see me there, mind your business. But
fans of the show, please approach Alexa Baker.
She's having a meet and greet at South County.
I love The Iron Claw. If you don't know, it is a wrestling movie about the Von Erich brothers. It's a very, very sad and tragic story, but it has a lot of good meanings about family, brotherhood, athletics, how you can really bring everybody together. And the one brother is still with us.
Don't
It's
spoil
not a
it.
spoiler.
Oh, okay.
It's not a spoiler. The one brother is still with us, and he was involved in the making of everything. And we got Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, pretty good cast if you ask me. But yeah, I really like that movie. It's very, very sad though, so trigger warning if you watch it.
All right, my favorite sports movie. It's kind of cliche, especially if you're a hockey person, but I love
You're
Miracle.
gonna say Miracle, yeah.
I love Miracle one, I'm a huge hockey fan. My family play hockey. My grandpa played hockey. My dad played hockey. My brothers play hockey. So every year we'd go to Lake Placid, where I've been to the rink where it happened.
Okay.
I've been to Lake Placid where it all took place, and seeing the history alongside the movie, which I think did a pretty good job at depicting the events and the emotions and the players and everything. So just have really good memories associated with it. We used to watch it every time we went up there on the 4-hour drive. We'd watch it twice, and yeah, I love hockey, and I think it makes me feel very patriotic as well. It's a great moment in American sports history. I watch it, I'm like, yeah, sports, America, USA. And yeah, I just have really good memories associated with it.
So now we'll take a look at Mercer and how they got here to face off with the Rhode Island Rams in Georgia. The Mercer Bears, they entered the FCS Playoffs as the number 7 seed, having secured the first round bye by winning their first ever Southern Conference title in 2024. That's one of the many similarities between the Rams and Bears. Another similarity, the two teams were 10-2 in the regular season, 7-1 in the conference for both teams, both undefeated at home, 6-0. The Bears also 4-2 on the road. They have a handful of ranked wins. They beat number 14 Chattanooga, number 23 Wofford, number 24 Western Carolina, number 23 Eastern Tennessee State. Their losses came to an unranked Samford, so that's an FCS loss, but also the FBS juggernaut, the Alabama Crimson Tide. The Bears also have other wins against Presbyterian, Bethune-Cookman, the Citadel, Princeton, VMI, and Furman. Only 2 of Mercer's 10 wins have come by only 1 score, and only 1 by 2 possessions, with all of the other wins being by 3 possessions or more.
Yeah, this is a really dominant team, and it's almost rather jarring how many similarities there are between these two teams. You talked about 7-1 in conference, undefeated at home, and one of your 2 road losses being to an FBS opponent. So now we're going to take a look at the stat breakdown between these two teams. And first, of course, we're going to start with Mercer on the season. Like you talked about, they must have a dominant offense if they're winning all these games by multiple possessions, and they do. 34 points a game for the Mercer Bears, holding opponents to just 20 points a game, so an average margin of victory of 14 points. Offensively, the Bears want to win it in the trenches, again, similar to Rhode Island, just by pounding the rock, right, and preventing opponents from doing anything similar to that. So it's kind of shaping up to be similar to that Rhode Island CCSU game that we just had the pleasure of watching. The Bears average just 4.3 yards per carry, but have over 160 more rush attempts than pass attempts this season. So a run-heavy team is the Bears, and they're averaging about 170 rushing yards per game. And defensively, the Bears hold opponents to under 70 rushing yards per game and a jarring 2.3 yards per carry. So Rhode Island has their work cut out from them. In the passing game, the Bears are also efficient when they choose to pass. They're averaging about 8.5 yards per attempt on the season. And Mercer has been penalized at a 3-2-1 rate compared to their opposition. This is something that, as we look at how Mercer stacks up to Rhode Island, this is where Rhode Island has to get their money's worth. You got to limit the penalties, and we saw them do it this past week. Well, they might have been penalized more than Central Connecticut. Only 3 penalties for Rhode Island this past weekend is a very good mark. This Bears team isn't very flashy on third down, but they hold opponents to just 25% on third down conversions, and in large part thanks to that pass rush, which has accumulated a whopping 40 sacks through just 12 games this season.
All right, now we're going to move on to the individual performances of this Mercer team. Mercer saw 2 different quarterbacks under center. A dual-threat junior, DJ Smith's injury threw freshman gunslinger Whit Neubauer into the limelight. Neubauer stands at 6'6" with 7 games played, 10 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 179 passing yards per game. Smith stands at 6'2", 200 pounds with 8 games played. He started to begin the year with 9 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 164 passing yards per game, with 137 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. Neubauer has seemingly taken the starting job and has run it with the absence of the injured DJ Smith, who appears to be returning to the lineup Saturday. The backfield is led by 5'8", 180-pound senior Dwayne McGee, who has over 1,000 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns. However, his touches have been diminished down the stretch in favor of a heavier running back rotation with CJ Miller, Micah Bell, and Tyrell Cord. Miller offers a power back at 230 pounds, whereas Bell and Cord offer a combination of size and strength. Cord is the team's primary receiving back with 14 catches for 170 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns.
Up front, the Bears have an experienced offensive line led by seniors Riley Adcock and Israel McQuiza. At receiver, the team is led by senior Keelan Parsons, who has 38 catches for 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. The team has 4 others with over 20-plus receptions: Braden Smith, who hasn't played since November 2nd, Ajite Dabbs, Parker Roble, and Kendall Harris, all of whom are more experienced side of things compared to Parsons. Senior linebacker Ken Stanley sits at the heart of the Bears defense, leading the team with 82 total tackles, 8 for a loss, 1.5 sacks, and 2 pass breakups. Mercer boasts a young but very frightening pass rushing trio in Braden Manley, Arias Nash, and Andrew Zock, who combined for 22 of the team's 40 sacks and 38 tackles for a loss. If the pass rush isn't notable enough, the team also has a veteran ball-hawking trio of TJ Moore, Miles Redding, and Dane Miller. TJ Moore has a total of 54 tackles, 7 interceptions, and 11 pass breakups, while Miles Redding has 55 total tackles, 6 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, and 1 forced fumble. Datus Miller has 15 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, and a block kicked. In other words, this Mercer team is the most talented the Rams have seen this season.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you play games against Minnesota, and of course, Rhode Island doesn't have a choice, but they did play an FBS transitioning team in Delaware, and thankfully you get to experience those teams that really do, feature that depth, that talent all across the board. And from what I can tell when we break down the stats, this is a team that sort of lines up similar, to the Rams the same way CCSU did, but in a much more talented way. And so when you look back at what Rhode Island did in that first playoff game and you think about the things that they didn't do all that well, whether it was some poor decision making offensively or just some missed tackles and whatnot throughout the game, those mistakes simply cannot happen. We've talked about it before, on the show, that you can't afford to make those mistakes against high quality opponents. Well, if there was ever a time for Coach Fleming and the position coaches to preach that, this is the week. Any little mistake that the quarterback makes or the special teams make or a defensive back might make in coverage, it will be amplified. Everything is on the line this week, and this is just a team that is has talent up and down the board. And for Rhode Island, like I've been saying, those little mistakes, those little things, that is what will make the difference this week. So, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rhody Beat Report. I'm Justin Theriault, joined by Alexa Baker, Zach Petrick, and Emily Lanzarone. Join us next week as we eagerly await what's next for this storied 2024 Rams football team.